island of Sodor. The fields were changing from yellow stubble to brown earth, and the tractor was hard at work as Thomas puffed along. Later, Thomas saw the tractor close by. "Hello," said the tractor. "I'm Terrence. I'm plowing." "I'm Thomas. I'm pulling a train. What ugly wheels you've got." "They're not ugly. They're caterpillars," said Terrence. "I can go anywhere. I don't need rails." "I don't want to go anywhere," said Thomas. "I like my rails, thank you." Winter came with dark clouds full of snow. "I don't like it," said Thomas's driver. "A heavy fall is coming. I hope it doesn't stop us." Said Thomas. "Soft stuff, nothing to it." And he puffed on, feeling cold but confident. They finished their journey safely, but by now the country was covered. "You'll need your snowplow for the next journey, Thomas," said his driver. "Snow is silly, soft stuff. It won't stop me." The snowplow was heavy and uncomfortable and made Thomas cross. He shook it and he banged it, and when they got back, it was so damaged that the driver had to take it off. "You're a very naughty engine," he said to Thomas. Next morning, Thomas's driver and fireman came early and worked hard to mend the snowplow, but they couldn't make it fit. Thomas was pleased. "I shan't have to wear it. I shan't have to wear it," he puffed to the firemen. But they were rather worried. "I hope it's all right. I hope it's all right," they whispered to each other. The driver was worried too. "It's not bad here," he said to the fireman, "but it's sure to be deep in the valley." "Silly soft stuff," puffed Thomas. "And I shan't today. Snow can't stop me." He rushed into a tunnel thinking how clever he was, but there was trouble ahead. "Cinders and ashes," said Thomas. "I'm stuck." And he was. "Back, Thomas, back," said his driver. Thomas tried, but his wheels spun and he couldn't move. The conductor went back for help, while everyone else tried to dig the snow away. But as fast as they dug, more snow slipped down until Thomas was nearly buried. "Oh, my wheels and coupling rods! I shall have to stop here till I'm frozen! What a silly engine I am!" And Thomas began to cry. At last, a bus came to rescue the passengers. And then, who should come to Thomas's rescue but Terrence? Snow never worries him. He pulled the empty coaches away, then came back for Thomas. Thomas's wheels were clear, but still spun when he tried to move. Terrence tugged and slipped and tugged, and at last dragged Thomas clear of the snow, ready for the journey home. Terrence, your caterpillars are splendid, said Thomas. I hope you'll be sensible now, Thomas, said his driver. I'll try, said Thomas, and he puffed slowly away. One winter evening, Henry's driver said, "We'll be out early tomorrow. We've got to take the flying kipper. Don't tell Gordon, but I think if we pull the kipper nicely, Sir Topham Hatt will let us pull the express. The special coal they gave you is working well." "Hooray!" cried Henry. "That will be lovely." All kinds of ships use the harbor at the big station by the sea. There are passenger ships, cargo ships, and fishing boats also come here. They unload their fish on the quay. Some of it goes to shops in the town, and the rest in a special train to other places far away. This is the train the railwaymen call the Flying Kipper. Henry was ready at 5 o'clock. There was snow and frost. Men hustled and shouted, loading up the crates of fish. The last door banged, the guard showed his green lamp, and the Flying Kipper was ready to go. Come on, don't be silly, puffed Henry to the freight cars. The cars shuddered and groaned. Trickety-trock, all right. That's better, puffed Henry. Clouds of smoke and steam poured from his funnel into the cold air, and the fire's light shone brightly. Hurry, panted Henry. They were going well. The light grew better. Signal lights shone green as they passed. Then a yellow signal appeared ahead. His driver prepared to stop, but the home signal was down. All clear, Henry. Away we go. They couldn't know the switches from the main line to a siding were frozen, and the home signal should have been set at danger, but snow had forced it down. A freight train was waiting in the siding to let the Flying Kipper pass, and the driver and fireman were drinking cocoa in the caboose. The Kipper is due, said the conductor. Who cares, said the fireman. This is good cocoa. The driver got up. Come on, fireman, back to our engine. They got out just in time. Henry's driver and fireman had jumped clear before the crash, but Henry lay dazed and surprised. Sir Topham Hatt came to see him. The signal was down, sir, said Henry. Cheer up, Henry. It wasn't your fault. Ice and snow caused the accident. I'm sending you to Crewe, a fine place for sick engines. They'll give you a new shape and a larger firebox. You'll feel a different engine, and you won't need special coal anymore. Won't that be nice? Yes, sir, said Henry, doubtfully. Henry liked being at Crewe, but was glad to come home. A crowd of people waited to see him arrive in his new shape. He looked so splendid and strong that they gave him 3 cheers. He whistled, "Thank you very much." I'm sorry to say that a lot of little children are often late for school because they wait to see Henry go by. They often see him pulling the express. He does it so well, Gordon is jealous. But that's another story. It was Christmas on the island of Sodor. All the engines were working hard. Thomas and Toby were busy carrying people and parcels up and down the branch line. Everyone was happy. Only the coaches, Annie and Clarabelle, were complaining. "It's always the same before Christmas," they groaned. "We feel so full. We feel so full." "Oh, come on," said Thomas. "Where's your festive spirit? Christmas Day is almost here." By the side of the track was a little cottage with a familiar figure waving to them. "It's Mrs. Kindly," whistled Thomas. "Beep, beep. Happy Christmas." Thomas always felt better for seeing her. "Christmas just wouldn't be Christmas without Mrs. Kindly," he said to himself. When work was over, Thomas went to see the other engines. All their coats had been polished. "Huh," said Gordon. "Just look at us. Your driver will have to work fast to get you as smart as us." "Never mind that," replied Thomas. "I've something important to say. Do you realize it's been a whole year since Mrs. Kindly saved us from a nasty accident? Do you remember when she was ill and bad and—" "Yes, of course," interrupted Edward. "You told us how she waved her red dressing gown out of her window to warn you about a landslide ahead." "And you and Toby gave her presents?" Percy joined in. "And Sir Topham Hatt sent her to the seaside to get better." "But," said the other engines, "the rest of us never thanked her properly." "Exactly," said Thomas. "So now I think we should all give her a special Christmas party." Everyone was getting very excited, and the drivers felt sure that Sir Topham Hatt would agree, as indeed he did. The engines were all busy making plans when silence fell. Sir Topham Hatt had bad news. "The weather's changed badly. Mrs. Kindly is snowed up. Toby says he'll help to rescue her. You must help too, Thomas. There's no party unless you do." Thomas hated snow, but he said bravely, "I'll try, sir. We must rescue her. We must." "There's a good engine. You and Toby will manage splendidly." Thomas charged the snowdrifts fiercely. Sometimes he swept them aside, sometimes they stuck fast, and the men had to loosen them. But at the cutting near the cottage, they could go no further. Look at that, exclaimed Thomas's fireman. Beep, beep, here we are. An answering wave came from an upstairs window. Then they heard a familiar sound. That's Terence, the tractor, said Thomas. He's come to help too. Sure enough, Terence had a snowplow and was working hard to clear a patch to the railroad line and safety. At long last, the rescue was complete. Percy took the tired workmen home. Terence said goodbye to Mrs. Kindly and promised to take care of her cottage as he watched them all set off. The engines made good time. No more snow had fallen. The yard was dark. There was no one to be seen. Thomas's heart sank. Suddenly, all the lights went on. What a marvelous sight awaited Mrs. Kindly. Well done, said Sir Topham Hatt. I'm really proud of you all. Mrs. Kindly especially thanked the smaller engines. Thomas and Toby are old friends, she said. And now, Percy, you are my friend too. Percy was very pleased. 3 cheers for Mrs. Kindly, he called. Beep, beep, beep. They all whistled. We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thomas the Tank Engine and his friends thought it was the best Christmas ever, and Mrs. Kindly could think of nowhere she would rather live than here, with them, on the island of Sodor. It was a cold winter's morning on the island of Sodor. The wind was bitter and the ground hard with frost. Thomas and Percy were cold and cross. All I want is a warm boiler, huffed Thomas. Firelighter knows that. He's late. He's not late, replied Percy. This weather woke us up early. Gusts of wind swirled round the shed, tossing flakes of snow toward Thomas. Then they swooshed round Percy, too. Why don't we talk about something else? Shivered Percy. Yes, replied Thomas, like how silly we'll look when our funnels turn into icicles. That's not funny. Maybe we'll stop feeling cold if we talk about warm things, like sunshine and steam. And firelighters, muttered Thomas. Scarves, continued Percy. Scarves? Laughed Thomas. That's what you need, Percy. A woolly scarf round your funnel. Thomas was only teasing, but Percy thought happily about scarves until the firelighter came. Sir Topham Hatt was enjoying hot porridge for breakfast. He was looking forward to taking important visitors on a tour of the railway and had pressed his special trousers. I shall put them in my trunk, Sir Topham Hatt said to his wife, and change into them just before the photographs are taken. Then he set off to catch his train. Percy was now working hard. His fire was burning nicely, and he had plenty of steam, but he still thought about scarves. He saw them everywhere he went. My funnel's cold, he puffed. I want a scarf, I want a scarf. Rubbish, Percy, said Henry. Engines don't wear scarves. Engines with proper funnels do, replied Percy. You've only got a small one. Before Henry could answer, Percy puffed away. Henry snorted. He was looking forward to pulling the special train. It was time for the photographs. Everyone was excited. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting on the platform for his trousers. They were in a trunk amongst a big load of baggage. The porters were taking the baggage trolley across the line. They were walking backwards to see that nothing fell off. Percy was still being cheeky. His driver always shut off steam just outside the station. Percy wanted to surprise the coaches by coming in as quietly as he could. But the porters didn't hear him either. Percy gave them such a fright that boxes and bags burst everywhere. "Oh," groaned Percy. Sticky streams of jam trickled down Percy's face. A top hat hung on his lamp iron. Worst of all, a pair of trousers coiled lovingly around his funnel. Everyone was very angry. Sir Topham Hatt seized the top hat. "Mine," he said. "Percy, look at this." "Yes, sir. I am, sir." "My best trousers, too." "Yes, sir. Please, sir." "We must pay the passengers for their spoiled clothes, and my trousers are ruined. I hope this will teach you not to play tricks with the coaches." Percy went off to the yard. He felt very silly. On the way, he met James. "Hello, Percy. So you found a scarf, eh? But legs go in trousers, not funnels." And he puffed away to tell Henry the news. That evening, Thomas and Percy were resting in the shed. Percy's driver had taken away the trousers and given Percy a good rub-down. "Firelighters promised to come early tomorrow," said Thomas. Henry arrived. He'd enjoyed taking the visitors around and now felt sorry for Percy, too. "Driver says the weather will be warmer tomorrow. You won't need a scarf, Percy." "Certainly not," replied Percy. "Engines don't need scarves. Engines need warm boilers. Everyone knows that."
This is the story of Thomas's Winter Wonderland. It's a winter wonderland. See the snow all around. Bells are ringing, ding-a-ling-a-ling, ding-dong. Sleigh bells jingle, home for the holiday we go, rushing to our winter wonderland. It's a winter wonderland. Little engine working hard. His snowplow heaving, chugga-chugga-chugga-choo. Bother this silly snow! Don't hold me up, please don't delay. Must get to my winter wonderland. It's Thomas's winter wonderland. Climb on board and join us if you can. See mainline engines rushing to and fro. Festive decorations, people rushing home. Brush line engines circle through the snow. Firesides blaze through winter haze. Happy holiday. Look everybody, there's Thomas. And James, Gordon and Henry. And look, Erin and Toby too. Home for the holiday we go, rushing to our winter wonderland. It's Thomas's winter wonderland. Climb on board and join us if you can. See Terence tractor clear away the snow. Bertie Bus is wonderful. Just look at him go. Season's greetings, happy holidays. Close your eyes, dream your dreams. See how the magic stays. It's a winter wonderland. See the sleigh all around. Bells are ringing, ding-a-ling-a-ling, ding-dong. Children singing, home for the holiday we go, rushing to our winter wonderland. Our winter wonderland. Our winter wonderland.
Mavis is a diesel engine who works for the quarry company shunting freight cars in their sidings. She has 6 small wheels hidden by side plates just like Toby's. Mavis is young and full of her own ideas. She loves rearranging things too and began putting Toby's cars in different places every day. This made Toby cross. Freight cars, he grumbled, should be where you want them when you want them. Fiddlesticks, said Mavis and flounced away. At last, Toby lost patience. I can't waste time playing hunt the cars with you. Take them yourself. Mavis was pleased. Taking cars made her feel important. At the station, Diesel oiled up to her. Toby's an old fusspot, she complained. Diesel sensed trouble and was delighted. Toby says only steam engines can manage freight cars, continued Mavis. How absurd, squirmed Diesel. Depend upon it, Mavis. Anything steam engines can do, we Diesels can do better. Diesel knew nothing about cars, but Mavis didn't realize this. Toby's line crosses the main road behind the station and for a short way follows a farm lane. Frosty weather makes the muddy lane rock hard and very slippery. Toby stops before reaching the lane. His fireman halts the traffic at the crossing, and then he sets off again. By using the heavy cars to push him along, he has no trouble with the frosty rails in the lane and across the road. It is the only safe thing to do in this kind of weather. Toby warned Mavis and told her just what to do. I can manage, thank you, she replied. I'm not an old fusspot like you. The freight cars were tired of being pushed around by Mavis. It's slippery, they whispered. Let's push her around instead. On, they yelled. Mavis took no notice. Instead, she brought the cars carefully down the lane and stopped at the level crossing. All traffic halted. One in the headlamp for fusspot Toby, chortled Mavis. But Mavis had stopped in the wrong place. Instead of taking Toby's advice, she had given the cars the chance they wanted. Hold back, they cried. Grrr, ordered Mavis. The cars just laughed and the wheels spun helplessly. Workmen sanded the rails and tried to dig away the frozen mud, but it was no good. Everyone was impatient. Grrr, wailed Mavis. Toby was in the yard when he heard the news. I warned her, he fumed. She's young yet, soothed his driver, and she can manage her cars herself, interrupted Toby. They're your cars, really, his driver replied. Mavis is supposed to stay at the quarry if Sir Topham Hatt finds out. Yes, said Toby thoughtfully. He and his driver agreed that it would be best to help Mavis after all. An angry farmer was telling Mavis just what she could do with her train. Having trouble, Mavis? Chortled Toby. I am surprised. Gosh, said Mavis. With much puffing and wheel slip, Toby pushed Mavis and the freight cars back. The hard work made his fire burn fiercely, and his firemen spread hot cinders to melt the frozen mud. At last they finished. Goodbye, called Toby. You'll manage now, I expect. Mavis didn't answer. She took the cars to the sheds and scuttled home to the quarry as quickly as she could. One day, Percy arrived at the quarry to collect some stone for his freight cars. Snow and frost lay everywhere. There was not a sound to be heard. Percy ventured further. He found Mavis, the new diesel engine, resting in the shelter of some rocks. Cheer up, Mavis, he whistled. Mavis was still remembering the trouble she'd had with cars. Manager says I don't listen to advice. He says I've no business jauntering down Toby's line. Toby's a fusspot. Toby
Toby has forgotten more about freight cars than you will ever know, replied Percy. You must put the cars where he wants them. Then you'll be a really useful engine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to take these stones to the harbor. Mavis liked Percy, but she still wouldn't listen to his advice. Why shouldn't I go on Toby's line?
The siding arrangements were awkward. To put the cars where Toby wanted them, Mavis had to make several journeys. She started making a plan. If we used the teeniest bit of Toby's line, she said to her driver, we would save all this bother. Her driver, suspecting nothing, allowed them to go as far as the first level crossing. A few days later, the weather changed. As the snow melted, the quarry grew busy again. Some trains were so long that before leaving the cars for Toby, Mavis had to go beyond the level crossing with them. Now for her plan. She would go further down the line without it seeming her fault. Can you keep a secret? She asked the freight cars. Yes, they chattered. Will you bump me at the level crossing and tell no one I asked you? The cars promised. But while Mavis was away, Toby arrived. He decided to shunt the cars himself. The cars decided to bump him anyway. They reached the level crossing and Toby's brakes came on. This was the signal for the freight cars. They yelled. Toby was away, with the cars screaming and yelling behind him. Rails were now like a tightrope across the thundering water. Stop! Nothing now. The driver braked hard. Toby stopped, still on the rails, but with his wheels treading the tightrope over the abyss. Mavis was horrified and quickly came to the rescue. Workmen anchored Toby with ropes while she pulled the freight cars away. Then she helped Toby to safety. I'm sorry about the cars. I can't think how you managed to stop them in time. Well, said Toby, my driver told me about circus people who walk tightropes, but I just didn't fancy doing it myself. Later, Sir Topham had arrived. A very smart piece of work, he said. Mavis, you did well too, I hear. It was my fault about those cars, sir, she faltered. But if I could what? Come down the line sometime, sir? Toby says he'll show me what to do. Certainly, replied Sir Topham Hatt, if your manager agrees. And so it was arranged. Now Mavis is as happy as can be, and Sir Topham Hatt thinks she's really useful indeed.
His monkeys are turning
It was winter on the island of Sodor. The first fogs had begun to roll in from the sea. Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle loved the quiet of Misty Valley, but Thomas must be careful of rocks that sometimes roll onto the tracks. Cyril the Fog Man has a very important job. He puts detonators on the tracks to warn the engines when there's fog ahead. Ooh, shivered Thomas as he ran over the detonator. That made my axles tingle. Cyril's done his job, said his driver. We better slow down. There's fog ahead. Thank you, Cyril, said Thomas. That night at the sheds, Sir Topham Hatt had something special to show the engines. It was very large and strange looking. What is it? Asked Percy. It's a new invention, a railway foghorn, said Sir Topham Hatt. It warns you when there's fog ahead, like this. That's loud, said Percy. Too loud, huffed James. Sounds like a tugboat to me, grumbled Gordon. Thomas looked worried. What will Cyril do now, he asked. He will be getting a much-needed rest, said Sir Topham Hatt. Besides, this new foghorn will be more reliable. Poor Cyril, whispered Thomas. He's been scrapped. The next day, Percy was cheerfully chuffing through Misty Valley, when suddenly... Oh, jeepers, exclaimed Percy. That foghorn is so loud it rattles my dome. It doesn't even make my axles tingle. Still, we'd better slow down, said his driver. There's fog ahead. The foghorn had been so loud that it made the hillside shake. No sooner was Percy out of sight when one then another and another. Before long, the track was blocked, and the foghorn was crushed. Not far away, Thomas was happily puffing right on time. I can't see a thing, said Thomas. And then, before he could even think of anything else, bust my buffers, cried Thomas. What happened to the foghorn? I don't know, said his driver, but at least nobody's been hurt. Toby will be coming down the line any minute, said his fireman. If there's no fog warning, said Thomas, he'll run into us. Leave it to me, called a voice from the fog. It's Cyril, said Thomas. I hope he's in time. Toby and his coach Henrietta were chuffing along. Toby was looking forward to a well-earned drink at the next station when... Fog detonators, puffed Toby. There must be fog ahead, said his driver. We better slow down. And just around the next bend, with his axle still tingling, Toby was very glad they did. Otherwise, they would have crashed into Thomas's wreck. Soon the tracks were cleared and Thomas was back on the rails. If it hadn't been for Cyril, said Thomas, Toby might have had a worse accident than me. Instead of replacing Cyril with the foghorn, said Sir Topham Hatt, we'll replace the foghorn with Cyril. You're clearly more reliable. Thank you, sir, said Cyril. And thank you, said Toby. New inventions are all very well, said Thomas. But they don't make my axles tingle, said Percy. It's winter holiday time on the island of Sodor. It's very cold, but the engines don't mind. They love this time of year when the stations look jolly in their decorations. There was plenty of work with passengers and parcels to be delivered, no matter what the weather. Driver says there's more snow on the way, said Edward. We'll soon be wearing our snowplows, said James. You'll enjoy that, won't you, Thomas? teased Henry. You know I won't, said Thomas. I don't like my snowplow. Sure enough, that night the wind blew and the snow fell heavily. The next morning, Sir Topham had arrived. He told the engines they were to have snowplows fitted. And you are to collect a special from Callan Station. It's needed for the village feast on Toby's branch line. Thomas was excited about his special, but not about his snowplow. Please, sir, my plow is awkward and uncomfortable. Do I have to wear it? Everyone has to wear a snowplow, said Sir Topham Hatt. The fitters, his driver, and firemen all helped with Thomas's snowplow. We'll try that again, laughed his driver. Big, horrid, awkward thing, Thomas grumbled. He was much happier when he arrived at Callan Station and saw his special. It was a beautiful Christmas tree. The tree will have lights and stand in the middle of the village, said Edward. Make sure you get it to Toby safely. I will, said Thomas. Thomas arrived at Maithwaite, and Toby was very happy to see him. The villagers will be delighted with this tree, Toby said. I'm glad you have your snowplow. I can't clear the snowdrifts by myself. Thomas couldn't see. There was a huge rock buried under the snow. Suddenly his snowplow hit the rock. Bouncing buffers, exclaimed Thomas. My plow is broken. His driver tried to stop, but the broken plow hit the water tower. Cinders and ashes, exclaimed Thomas. We can't go any further, said Thomas's driver. And there's no one to help us. But the villagers need their tree, said Thomas. Let me try again. I'm sure I can make it. It wasn't easy without a snowplow, but Thomas was determined. He pushed, and he pushed, and he pushed. Thomas was trying as hard as he could, but there was just one snowdrift after another. Finally, Thomas and Toby were pulling into the village station. Thomas whistled and the villagers cheered when they saw their beautiful tree. Hooray, they said, hooray! The next day, Sir Topham Hatt sent for Thomas. Thomas was worried. What would Sir Topham Hatt say about his broken snowplow? But Sir Topham Hatt wasn't cross. He was very pleased. The villagers had a wonderful feast, he said. You're very brave to take on that snow without a plow. Thank you, sir, said Thomas. As you know, continued Sir Topham Hatt, there are no spare snowplows, so you'll just have to do without yours for a while. Oh, thank you, sir, grinned Thomas.
Just working hard. has lots of friends and you can be one too. Just clap, clap, clap and sing along. Thomas, we love you. Thomas the Tank Engine rolling along. All of his friends will be coming along. Thomas, we love you. Let's go to the Henry. Here's the James and Tony and Carabelle. Don't forget Percy. Terrence and Bertie. Dizzy and Daisy. Lots more friends for you. Thomas the Tank Engine rolling along. All of his friends will be coming along. Thomas, we love you. All of his friends will be coming along. Thomas, we love you. Thomas, we love you. Thomas, we
Winter on the island of Sodor can be windy and cold. When the cold wind blows, the engines can't wait to get back to the snug warmth of Tidmouth Shed. Bitter cold, bitter cold, bitter cold, chuffed Toby. Still, I'll soon be back in my nice dry shed. But suddenly, Toby's driver applied the brake. He could see a farmer standing knee-deep in snow. He was waving a red flag. My phone lines are down. All the roads are blocked. And my sheep have just started lambing, the farmer said. They're trapped on the hillsides, cut off by the snow. What can we do to help? Toby chuffed. I need a vet as quickly as possible. We'll stop at the next signal box, said Toby's driver. I'll phone the vet from there. Toby raced to the signal box, and the driver phoned ahead to the station. Sir Topham Hatt and the vet were waiting for Toby as he arrived. The farmer's lambs are stranded on the hillside, cried Toby. We've got to rescue them. So we shall, said Sir Topham Hatt. I'll send Duck right away. This is a job for an engine with a snowplow. Toby knew Duck was the right engine for the job. He was very powerful. Hurry, Toby called anxiously as Duck chuffed out of the station. But so much snow had fallen, the tracks ahead were blocked. We can't go on, said Duck's driver grimly. We'll have to go back. Toby was surprised to see Duck return to the station. I tried my hardest, puffed Duck, but the weather's getting worse. Even Snowplow can't get through, said his driver. Then Toby had an idea. My old branch line runs out there, sir. Remember? Far too dangerous, said Sir Topham Hatt. It would never carry Duck's weight. It might take my weight, said Toby. And I know that line like the back of my buffers, he added. It's our only chance to help the lambs. Sir Topham Hatt agreed, but he told Toby to be very careful. Soon a blizzard was howling. Toby's driver was worried. I can do it, called Toby. as long as these rails hold. But Toby had forgotten about the rickety old bridge. Help! My wheels are wobbling, he cried. His driver fought for control as Toby struggled on. I've got to reach the other side of this bridge, gasped Toby. Those lambs need me. The farmer was waiting. It was very cold. Suddenly, a ghostly glowing eye shone through the snowstorm. It was Toby's headlamp. You made it, cried the farmer. What a brave engine you are. And the farmer went to find the lambs. But they soon returned. Lambs are safe and sound, Toby, said the vet. But we need a place now to keep the little ones warm. Toby smiled. I think you'll find Henrietta has plenty of room. Toby stayed for several days, just to make sure the lambs were all right. The farmer was very grateful. Thank you, Toby, he said. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you, said Toby. There's nothing I like better than helping out a friend in need.
Winter was coming to the island of Sodor. The morning ground was covered in crisp white frost. Thomas and Emily were happily chuffing up and down the line. Thomas was enjoying pulling Annie and Clarabelle. He thought he was doing a grand job. But Emily had other ideas. She thought he could be doing an even grander job. So Emily decided to help Thomas by telling him what he was doing wrong. When she saw him puffing down the branch line, she cried out, "Slow down! You're going too fast and bumping your passengers." Later, Emily saw Thomas by a bridge. He had stopped to take on water and was talking to some children. "Stop talking to the children," said Emily. "You are working and they will make you late." "I'm never late," said Thomas huffily. "There's always a first time," said Emily cheerfully, and she puffed away. Thomas was cross. He loved talking to children and thought Emily was being a big bossy buffers. Annie and Clarabelle agreed. "I am never going to listen to Emily ever again," said Thomas. "So there." The next morning, a sleepy Thomas had to leave Tidmouth Sheds bright and early. He was to collect some freight cars from the quarry and take them to the docks. Later that morning, Sir Topham had arrived with a new weather report.
"There is snow on the way. You must all have your snowplows fitted."
"Excuse me, sir," said Emily, "but Thomas has already left for the quarry."
"Then you must find Thomas and tell him Sir Topham Hatt wants him to wear his snowplow."
So Emily puffed away to get her snowplow fitted. The workman fixed Emily's snowplow on in no time at all, and she set off to find Thomas. Emily was very happy. She was looking forward to telling him what to do. Thomas was taking on water at Maithwaite Station. Emily puffed up in front of him. She blew her whistle, but Thomas didn't say hello. "She just wants to boss me again," grouched Thomas. "Thomas," she called, "you must go and get your snowplow fitted." Thomas could hear what Emily was saying, but pretended he couldn't. He thought he was being very clever. So Emily tooted even louder again. "You must go and get your snowplow fitted," she cried. "Bother snowplows," said Thomas, "and bother Emily. Anyway, the weather is perfectly fine," and he puffed away as fast as he could. "Oh, Thomas!" delivered the freight cars to the quarry, then set off to collect cream from the dairy. Everything was going well. But soon, the clear blue sky was eaten away by dark gray clouds. "They look like snow clouds to me," said his driver. And he was right. Soon, big flakes of white snow began to fall. Then the snow gathered into drifts and covered the tracks. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas as his wheels began to slip. Snow fell all over the island. Emily cut safely through the drifts with her snowplow. Thomas will be in trouble now. Emily was right. Thomas was working harder and harder, but he had to go more and more slowly. "We can't go on," said his driver. Thomas pulled to a slow, sad stop by a signal box. And his driver went for help. It snowed and snowed. Thomas felt very cold and twice as miserable. Then he heard the sound of an engine. Thomas was delighted until he saw who his rescuer was. It was Emily. "I told you to go and get your snowplow. Now look what's happened." Thomas was still cross. "You should say sorry for bossing me about." "I am sorry," said Emily. "Sorry you didn't listen to me." Emily and Thomas chuffed into Tidmouth's sheds. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting. He did not look happy. "Emily, you must take Thomas to get his snowplow fitted at once," said Sir Topham Hatt sternly. "Thomas, you must learn to listen." Thomas felt bad. He didn't know it was Sir Topham Hatt who wanted him to wear his snowplow. Emily felt bad too. She didn't like seeing Thomas in trouble. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. "I forgot to tell Thomas it was your idea." "You mean I have two engines that don't listen?" boomed Sir Topham Hatt. "Well, I never. Emily, you must take Thomas to get his snowplow fitted at once." Soon the work was finished, and Thomas was wearing his snowplow. "Thank you for owning up," said Thomas. "You are a very good friend." "That's all right," said Emily. "You are a good friend too. But next time, if you want to stay out of trouble, just do what I say." Even Thomas had to laugh.
Surprises, maybe dull and flat, 'cause no one knows what's down the line.
It was cold and snowy on the island of Sodor. The village children had built a snow engine. They were excited. The winter holidays were here. People were coming from far and wide to visit the island. This year, there was even more snow than usual. It covered the island and blocked the roads. Bertie the bus couldn't take any passengers. So Sir Topham Hatt came to Tidmouth's sheds. "Percy, you are to pull the passengers today," said Sir Topham Hatt. Percy worried. He usually took the mail or shunted freight cars. He hadn't pulled passengers for a long time. "Gordon will show you what to do," said Sir Topham Hatt, and he left. "I'm an express engine," puffed Gordon. "I shouldn't be slowed down by a small engine like Percy." Gordon went with Percy to the depot, but when Percy backed up to collect his coaches, he bumped them very hard. "No, no, no! You need to puff smoothly," Gordon huffed impatiently. "Watch me! You'll soon learn how to pull passengers." Gordon backed smoothly up to his coaches and buffered up to them gently. "Very smooth," said the yard manager. "The best buffering I've ever seen." Gordon was so proud he thought his boiler would burst. Maybe teaching Percy will be fun," Gordon said to himself. "Then he'll see I'm the biggest and the best." Gordon pulled into Knapford Station. He rolled smoothly to a stop. "Perfect," Gordon chuffed. Then Percy pulled into the station. "Look at all those passengers," he gasped. He blew his whistle and wheezed lots of steam. "You're doing it all wrong," puffed Gordon. "Don't wheesh until your passengers are on board. Watch me." Gordon waited. When all the passengers were on board, he wheeshed some steam. Gordon was very proud. He liked showing Percy that he was the best. Gordon was having lots of fun, but Percy wasn't. Percy was fed up. Gordon and Percy puffed across the island. Gordon puffed through the snowy valley. Percy puffed under the icy bridge. Later, Gordon and Percy were at another station. Their passengers were all on board. Percy wheezed some steam. "You're learning a little bit," groaned Gordon, "but you're still not doing it right. Watch me." Gordon wheezed some steam and pulled out of the station. "Big blue show-off," puffed Percy. But Gordon wasn't listening. He was already puffing through the countryside. "I'm so clever," Gordon chuckled. "There must be someone else I can show." And there was. "Watch me!" Gordon chuffed as he raced past James. "I puff nice and smoothly." Then he raced past Toby. "Watch me! I'm the fastest and the best!" Gordon puffed into the station. He was very excited. There were lots of people he could show off to. "Watch how smoothly I can go!" Gordon was so busy showing off, he didn't see how icy the track was. Gordon slid right through the station and into a siding. Everyone watched as he puffed into a big pile of snow. "Yuck!" coughed Gordon. Luckily, no one was hurt. Sir Topham Hatt was very cross. "I asked you to teach Percy," he said sternly, "not show off all afternoon." Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, Gordon puffed quietly. Just then, Percy puffed past. He pulled smoothly into the station. All of Percy's passengers arrived safely at the platform. Gordon's passengers had to walk through the snow. Gordon was very embarrassed. His face was as red as Bertie the bus. But Edward soon pulled him out of the snowdrift. Later that evening, it was time to go home. The passengers were all aboard Gordon and Percy. Gordon wanted to show Percy how smoothly he could puff. But then he remembered sliding into the snowdrift. Gordon didn't want to look silly again. Percy, you go first, Gordon puffed. Show me how smoothly you can go. So Percy pulled smoothly out of the station, and Gordon followed. Gordon and Percy puffed through the snowy countryside, and Gordon didn't show off once. At last, Gordon and Percy arrived at Tidmouth's sheds. Did you see how smoothly I puffed? Asked Percy.
Yes,
Said Gordon.
you have learned very well.
Percy was proud.
But then again,
Gordon added.
I am a very good teacher.
Keeping up with James. It was winter holiday season on the island of Sodor. Everywhere was covered in a beautiful blanket of soft snow. Sir Topham Hatt was at the fitter's yard. The engines were having their snowplows fitted.
We must get the island moving again, he boomed. And when the lines are clear, I will need an engine to take the presents train to the holiday party at Knapford.
All the engines wanted to take the presents train. It was the jolliest train of the year.
James, you must work with Edward, he said. Remember, the tracks are icy and you must all work together and take care.
But James wanted to finish first and take the presents train. An old blue slow coach like you is sure to slow me down, he huffed. James and Edward's first job was to clear the lines to Knapford. Edward worked as fast as he could, but it wasn't fast enough for James. Hurry up, he snorted. Henry was clearing the line when James steamed quickly past. Slow down, cried Henry, and take care! But James wasn't listening. He was dreaming about the presents train. He didn't notice that the tracks were icy. James' wheels began to slip and slide. Oh, he cried. He was going faster and faster. Yippee! Called James. He was starting to enjoy himself. He was sliding so fast that he slid all the way into Maythwaite Station. Later, James and Edward had to take some coal cars to the coaling plant. James waited for Edward. He listened to the choir and watched all the colorful decorations being put up. James wanted to take the presents train more than ever. Finally, Edward puffed in. Trust a blue engine to be late, called James. I'm sorry, gasped Edward. I had to go slowly and take care. Slow engines like you don't get to pull the presents train, snorted James. And they pulled away. James raced to the coaling plant as fast as he could. Must be first, he puffed. James reached the top of Gordon's Hill. The tracks were icy and James started to speed up. Edward wasn't happy. James's wheels started to slip and slide. Whee! Cried James. This is the way to get the job done fast. James thought it was the best slide ever. At the coaling plant, James and Edward's train had been filled with coal. Edward called to James, "You must slow down and take care." "I am taking care," replied James. "Taking care to finish first. I'm going to pull a presents train." James pulled out. They headed for Brenton Dock. Finish first, James puffed happily. He started to go faster, and faster, and faster. But he didn't know how very icy the tracks were. His wheels started to slip and slide. "Oh my!" cried James, and applied his brakes as hard as he could. Whoa! Edward tried to brake as well, but it was too late. "Bust my buffers!" cried James. "Oh dear!" wheezed Edward. Sir Topham had arrived on Sulk. He was very cross.
James and Edward, he boomed, the tracks were icy and you were not taking care. You have caused confusion and delay.
James felt bad. Edward wanted to slow down, but I wanted to go fast so that I could pull the presents train.
You won't be doing that now, James, said Sir Topham Hatt. Edward, you are a reliable engine. You can pull the presents train, but you can't pull it alone. It's a very long train.
"Sir," called James, "if I promise to go slowly and take care, can I be Edward's back engine?" Sir Topham Hatt wasn't sure.
Only if you can puff slowly and carefully, he said.
James felt pleased. "Edward," he puffed, "I will learn to take care just like you." And so Edward pulled James back onto the tracks. Later at Brendam Docks, the two engines collected their presents train and set off carefully for Naples. Whenever they came to some icy track, Edward called out, "Slow down!" And now James slowed down. And when they went down Gordon's Hill, Edward called out, "Apply your brakes, James!" And James applied his brakes. So slowly and safely, the two friends puffed into Knapford Station. When the children saw the presents, they cheered and cheered. "Thank you, James," called Edward. "Thank you, Edward," said James. "You are a really useful blue engine."
As the day dawns fine and the sunbeams shine, it's the start of another day. As the clouds pass by across the deep blue sky, like the sun, hip hip hooray! As the evening falls and the dawn falls, it's the end of another day. In the dark of night, as the moon shines bright, like the sun, hip hip hooray! Even through the midnight cloud, the engines never rest. There's milk to take and mail as well, they'll always do their best. As the day dawns fine and the sunbeams shine, it's the start good today and they'll as well. They'll always do their best. As the day dawns fine and the sunbeams shine, it's the start of another day. As the clouds pass by across the deep blue sky, life is fun, hip hip hooray. As the evening falls and the barn owl calls, it's the end of another day. In the dark of night, as the moon shines bright, life is fun, hip hip hooray. As the day dawns fine and the sunbeams shine, it's the start of another day. As the clouds pass by across the deep blue sky, life is fun, hip hip hooray. As the evening falls and the barn owl calls, it's the end of another day. In the dark of night, as the moon shines bright, life is fun, hip hip hooray.
Big, strong Henry. Winter was coming to the island of Sodor. Everyone was getting ready for the cold weather.
Thomas and Emily delivered coal. Percy collected freight cars of firewood.
And Farmer McCall was building a shed for his cows to keep them warm.
Farmer McCall needs lots of bricks, iron, and concrete, boomed Sir Topham Hatt. I need a strong engine to fetch them.
I can do it, sir, puffed Henry.
You're not as strong as I am, puffed Gordon. I'll do the job, sir.
Gordon and Henry were almost the same size, but Gordon always boasted he was the strongest. Sir Topham Hatt thought for a moment.
Gordon, you can do it. Henry, you can deliver the empty freight cars.
Empty freight cars, wheezed Henry. Never mind, Henry, tooted Thomas. We know you're big and strong. You could pull 10 cars of sand, couldn't you, peeped Percy? Yes, I could, chuffed Henry. You could pull 20 cars of coal, wheezed Emily. I suppose so, hooted Henry. You could pull 50 freight cars, wheezed Thomas, of iron and steel, because you're a big, strong Henry. Big, strong Henry, huffed Gordon. What nonsense. You'll see, tooted Thomas. Pah, Gordon wheezed grandly, and he set off to fetch the bricks, concrete, and iron for Farmer McCall. Henry had delivered his empty freight cars. How can I show Gordon that I'm big and strong? He steamed sadly. Then Henry saw Percy. Look, Henry, puffed Percy. If Gordon sees you pull 5 heavy cars, he'll see just how strong you are. Henry backed up. He pulled the cars out of the sidings. Look how strong Henry is, Gordon, peeped Percy. Put those freight cars back, Gordon wheezed. Those are for Farmer McCall. I am collecting them later. He's not as strong as you are, big strong Henry, puffed Percy. Henry smiled. I like being big, strong Henry, Henry thought. Henry saw Thomas waiting up ahead. Look, Henry, tooted Thomas, there are lots of heavy freight cars. Here comes Gordon, whistled Thomas. And here comes big strong Henry, hooted Henry. Then there was trouble. The freight cars were very heavy. Once Henry had started them rolling, they wouldn't stop. "Help!" cried Henry. Edward brought Rocky to lift Henry back onto the track. And he also brought Sir Topham Hatt. "Henry," boomed Sir Topham Hatt, "take those hay bales back to where you found them. One car at a time." "Yes, sir," wheezed Henry sadly. Henry had never felt so miserable. Gordon had delivered the last freight car to Farmer McColl's new shed. "Now, Gordon," boomed Sir Topham Hatt, "you can go and collect Farmer McColl's cows." Farmer McColl's men had loaded the cows into Gordon's trucks. Gordon was feeling very proud of himself. "Paw! Poor old Henry!" he laughed. "He's not big, strong Henry at all." Gordon set off. He was laughing so much, he didn't see that the car doors hadn't been shut properly. "Hello, Henry," whistled Gordon. "Hello, Gordon," hooted Henry. And then he noticed something. "All the cows are leaving your cars, Gordon," Henry puffed. "Oh, no," wheezed Gordon. "What am I going to do?" Then Henry saw something else. Some of the cows were eating the hay bales on his car. Suddenly an idea flew into Henry's funnel. Henry chuffed slowly along. The hungry cows followed him. They wanted to eat the hay from his freight car. They followed Henry all the way to their new shed. Farmer McColl was very pleased. That night, Thomas and Percy spoke to Henry. "We're sorry we got you into trouble," Thomas tooted. "I shouldn't have wanted to be big, strong Henry," hooted Henry. "Now you're even better," whistled Emily. "You really are very helpful, Henry." Henry smiled. "Even the strongest engine needs a little help sometimes," chuffed Henry. "Don't you agree, Gordon?" Gordon's face went as red as a signal. Thomas's frosty friend. The winter holiday season is a very busy time on the island of Sodor. Percy has more mail to deliver. Gordon has more visitors aboard his express. And Thomas has very important jobs to do. One morning, Thomas had to go to Brendam Docks. "I must pick up the logs for Farmer McColl," he puffed. Percy was waiting at the signal when Thomas arrived. He was very excited. "Look what's over there, Thomas," peeped Percy. Thomas looked. It was a big snowman. The children were excited too. "I've never seen such a big snowman," chuffed Percy. "Neither have I," tooted Thomas happily. The signal changed to green, and Thomas steamed away. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind lifted the snowman off the ground, away from the children. The snowman was a snowman balloon. Thomas didn't see the guide ropes catch on his buffers and get caught there. And he didn't know the balloon was now following him. Thomas stopped at the level crossing. Suddenly, the children's snowman was there in front of him. Thomas was surprised. He didn't know a snowman could dance in the air. "What are you doing here, Mr. Snowman?" cried Thomas. Mr. Snowman said nothing. "You must go back to the children," tooted Thomas. "They'll be very sad without you." The snowman blew away. Thomas was happy the snowman had gone. He raced away from the crossing. "If I puff past," chuffed Thomas, "Mr. Snowman will never be able to follow me." Thomas arrived at Brendam Docks. James was there delivering coal. "What are you doing with a snowman?" he snorted. "Oh no," tooted Thomas. Suddenly, the snowman danced in front of Thomas again. "Mr. Snowman, I told you to go back to the children. Why are you still following me?" Thomas steamed off as quickly as he could. He hoped the snowman wouldn't follow him. "Thomas," called James, "why do you have a giant balloon tied to your buffers?" But Thomas didn't hear him. Farmer McColl was waiting on the platform. Thomas reached to a halt. "Thomas," he exclaimed, "what are you doing with that snowman?" "Oh no," tooted Thomas. Suddenly, the snowman danced in front of Thomas again. "Mr. Snowman, I told you to go back to the children. Why are you still following me?" Farmer McColl didn't understand. And Thomas didn't know how to tell Farmer McColl about his frosty friend. Thomas steamed off as quickly as he could. He hoped the snowman wouldn't follow him. "Thomas," called Farmer McColl, "why do you have a giant balloon tied to your buffers?" But Thomas didn't hear him. Thomas had to stop at the signal at Maithwaite Station. Emily was picking up passengers. Emily could see the snowman bobbing about behind Thomas. "Thomas," laughed Emily, "what are you doing with that snowman?" "Oh no," tooted Thomas. Suddenly the snowman floated in front of Thomas again. "Mr. Snowman, I told you to go back to the children," cried Thomas. "Why are you still following me?" Thomas steamed off as quickly as he could. He hoped that the snowman wouldn't follow him. "Thomas," whistled Emily, "why do you have a giant balloon tied to your buffers?" But Thomas, he didn't know how to make Mr. Snowman go back to the children. Then he had an idea. "I'll hide," puffed Thomas quietly. Thomas chuffed into a lonely siding. He couldn't see the snowman. "Mr. Snowman won't be able to find me. Then he will have to go back to the children." Suddenly, a gust of wind blew hard. Mr. Snowman danced in front of Thomas again. He was still following him. "I must tell Sir Topham Hatt what has happened," cried Thomas. "I need his help." And Thomas raced off. Thomas puffed back into Maithwaite Station. Farmer McColl and Sir Topham Hatt were there. "Please, sir," peeped Thomas, "I don't know what to do. I've tried to tell Mr. Snowman to go back to the children, but he has been following me everywhere." "And he still is," laughed Sir Topham Hatt. "The snowman is a balloon, Thomas. And he is caught on your buffers." He is following you because you are pulling him. A balloon? Whistled Thomas. I thought snowmen were always made of snow and ice. Thomas felt very happy. Now he could take the Mr. Snowman Balloon back to the children. The children were delighted to see Thomas and Mr. Snowman. They cheered and cheered. And Thomas was very happy to have returned their frosty friend.